School test scores are up in Washington, D.C., but does that mean students are learning? The NewsHour special correspondent for education, John Merrill, has been tracking that school system's challenges. Here's his latest report.
Maisha Bailey, Elaine Meekins.
Here in Washington, D.C., Ron Brown Middle School has reason to celebrate.
The class of 2009 graduates, please stand.
After years of dismal performance, test scores are starting to climb.
This year we had the greatest gains we ever had. 30% of our students are proficient in reading and math, basically at this point.
30% may not sound like much, but in 2006, when Darren Slade became principal, only 9% of students here were on grade level in math.
My goal is to be at least 80% proficient, but you still have to celebrate gains. Okay, let's give these students a round of applause.
Ron Brown Middle School isn't alone. Students across Washington, long considered one of the worst school systems in the nation, are scoring higher on standardized tests. It's the result of an aggressive campaign, now 2 years old, by Mayor Adrian Fenty and his surprise pick to run the school system, former teacher and nonprofit leader Michelle Rhee.
Have a good school year, okay?
Bye-bye. I am not a career superintendent. This is going to be my one and only superintendency. So in that way, I'm lucky because I don't have to worry about, well, what's going to happen to my reputation or something like that.
From day one, Rhee seemed an unlikely leader for DC's public schools. She'd never even been a school principal, let alone a school superintendent. But here in Washington, D.C., which has seen 7 superintendents in a decade, 2 years in office makes Michelle Rhee a veteran. She's accomplished a lot. She's closed 23 schools, slashed her central office staff, pumped $200 million into school modernization, quadrupled spending on teacher training, and replaced about half of her school principals. But is education improving? That's a difficult question.
I think the jury is out. I think that it takes a little bit more than test scores to decide whether or not the schools are better.
DC Union President George Parker represents about 4,000 teachers. Are your teachers doing a better job?
I think we're doing a better job of measuring. I don't think it's necessarily representative that some kind of way our teachers were bad and now they're good. I think that the chancellor has brought into the system more strategic planning in terms of how to get the test scores up.
There's been a tremendous focus on just looking at individual questions that children got wrong and making sure that that child is drilled on getting that answer right the next time.
Margot Berkey is the director of Parents United for DC Public Schools.
What we've seen is the quick fix solutions of choosing to work intensively with kids who you knew could boost their test scores if they just got a few extra hours of instruction on particular glitches in their own test results.
Are you teaching to the test?
Well, if you think that the test measures whether or not children know the standards, and are you teaching the standards, then everyone should be teaching to the test to a certain extent.
To Rhee, teaching to the test means doing a better job of planning, teaching, and measuring. Traditionally, teachers create lesson plans before writing tests. But now at Ron Brown and here at Shaw Middle School, that's reversed.
We start by writing the test, and then we teach and we assess them, based on the test that we wrote at the very beginning.
Brian Betts is the principal at Shaw.
We're telling and identifying right away what it is that students should know and be able to do. And so if we follow that model, then yes, test scores are going to be it. I mean, that's going to be our measurement of whether or not they mastered the material.
To help teachers, Rhee has added math and reading coaches at many schools. On the theory that practice makes perfect, here at Shaw, teachers try out their lessons in front of colleagues.
My central question is, how could we apply Newton's law in our daily lives? And if we turn to the next page.
Rhee has also added assistant principals like Shannon Feinblatt at Ron Brown, who provide additional support to teachers.
If all of these students would have scored 1 to 2 to 3 points, our proficiency number would have been in the 50s. I would sit down and plan with teacher A and teacher B and work with them together to see what's happening in teacher A's room that may not be happening in teacher B's room. Because the test data that comes in will tell you exactly what the students know.
And on Rhee's watch, teachers and principals deemed ineffective are being moved out of the system at a higher rate than ever before.
The bottom line is that, yes, everybody who works for me has to feel comfortable and know that at the end of the day, we're going to look at the results, and if the results are not there, if they are not producing significant gains for kids, then there is a chance that they won't be here in the long term.
So it is really produce or else.
Shouldn't it be?
The pressure to show improvement has led principals to offer some extraordinary incentives.
Everybody got one?
At Shaw Middle School, Principal Betts offered $100 to every student who met 3 conditions: maintain perfect attendance in the days leading up to the tests, don't be tardy, and answer every question on the test, right or wrong.
The test items that you're going to have to respond to in writing are worth 3 times as much as the ones where you select A, B, C, or D.
And if scores improved, Betts promised to mark the occasion.
He said then he was going to get a tattoo.
What was your reaction?
I mean, I was surprised. I don't know if he's really going to do it.
I don't think he's going to get it. I mean, that's crazy.
Principal Betts will not be getting that tattoo. Test scores declined, 4 points in math and 9 points in reading. Rhee says she expects big gains soon, but Margot Berkey is not persuaded. Her daughter is in high school.
My daughter, for example, has spent nearly 3 full weeks of school on practice testing and being tested.
So what do you do in a practice test day? Fill in bubbles?
Exactly. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm not joking. That's what you do. You take tests. You take practice tests.
Berkey says there are better ways to raise achievement.
You make sure that they read, you make sure that they write, you make sure that their vocabulary is enriched during that process. When an educational experience is rich and deep, then the test results come as a corollary to that deeper work, not as the focus of the work.
What's your reaction to that criticism that the gains are not all that significant?
Well, I think there's always going to be people who are going to try to criticize and try to sort of say, well, it's due to this factor or that factor. The most frustrating thing to me about that is the fact that people look at the academic achievement levels of our population of kids and assume that it has to be due to some other factor, some nefarious thing that's going on, as opposed to actually believing that the kids are improving.
Rhee's leadership style has also come in for criticism. A recent federal report found that she has failed to involve the community on key decisions.
The history of school reform in the District of Columbia and in urban systems throughout the country is of reform which doesn't last. It doesn't get institutionalized, it doesn't get embedded. Things that work don't get kept.
At Rhee's performance evaluation in the spring, some community members testified that she was not building a lasting foundation for change.
Unless the community is invested in the reforms that are undertaken now, it's not going to last.
I actually don't think it's a fair criticism. I don't think it's a widespread criticism. I think that the vast majority of the people in the city are pleased with what they're seeing.
Close to half of elementary school students now test at grade level in reading and math. When Rhee took office in 2007, less than a third passed the test in math. In middle and high schools, the gains are more modest, from about 30% proficient 2 years ago to 40% today. The bottom line question remains, are schools better?
Though the progress has been strong, it's still nowhere close to where we want to be.
You're not declaring victory?
Absolutely not.
George Parker, the union leader, is also holding off.
I think that when we can say that teachers are getting the kind of professional development that is needed. I think when we say that kids are getting the kind of wraparound services that are needed, some things that can't be measured on a test score, then we can make a better assessment of is the school system getting better.
Do your teachers trust Michelle Rhee?
Some do and some don't.
How about you? Do you trust Michelle Rhee?
I trust Michelle to be who she is.
What's that mean?
I don't want to get in deep, but she is who she is.
For nearly 2 years, Parker and Rhee have been negotiating a new contract, one that could tie teacher pay to how well students perform on tests. Is this new contract going to make it easier for you to get rid of ineffective teachers?
The new contract, I think, will have a much greater focus on ensuring that every single classroom is staffed with an effective teacher.
Is pay for performance going to be in the contract?
Oh, I think pay for performance makes sense. I think it's a matter of how you implement it.
Can you give us any idea of how close you are?
To the contract? Very close.
How about a date?
Well, the president and I have talked about really wanting to make sure that we start the school year with the new contract in place.
So it could happen?
In the next few weeks. Hopefully.
Rhee hopes to stay in Washington for 6 more years if Mayor Fenty is reelected.
Learn more online, where you can find a link to John Merrow's Learning Matters website for podcasts and extended interviews with Superintendent Rhee and others. Just go to newshour.pbs.org.